Thanks, Dickon. So as we enter this final session, I'm conscious of a few things, really. First of all, we have this, well, I'm preparing us for our final discussion of the workshop and the conference. And really, we're interested in how can environmental research support the delivery of some of the challenges that we've heard about over the last couple of days. But also, I'm here on behalf of the INSITE program. I'm going to be trying to talk about some of the great things that offshore industries are doing to help with this particular challenge. I didn't mention, I'm Henk. I'm a research program manager, and as you've gathered, I also work on the INSITE program. So I'll kick us off going into more of the industry side to begin with, and then I'll come back to the other side. So offshore industries, like those that provide us with oil and gas, but also electricity from offshore winds, they support research activities in lots of ways. And of those numerous ways, I've selected three particular pathways that I think are of interest to us today. So the first pathway is that they provide the funds. So these funds can be direct. They can also, where they tend to be focused on specific research questions often set by that industry. They can also be indirect, where the specific work is often determined by the academic team working on the problem, but the broad, high-level questions are often set by the industry. The other, and perhaps most significant pathway, is when industry team up with other like-minded organizations, companies, and they form a consortium. They pool resources, they work together to tackle these challenges. And there's often, with that, you have in-kind support, things like site access to industry sites. You also have data access to previous survey data that's been carried out in those areas. Now, there are lots of ways that partnerships are formed, lots of models. There is no standard model. I've got a few examples of where this is working currently. So you've got the Offshore Wind Evidence and Change Programme, which is a £50 million programme managed by the Crown Estate, but there's 12 million of additional support fund coming from partners, and some of those are industry partners. One of the partners in there are the Offshore Wind Industry Council, and they band together. They, in addition to being on the OWEC Programme Advisory Group, they've also got their own initiatives, the Pathways to Growth Initiative, that looks to better understand the challenges around offshore wind consenting and to speed that up. You've got the Offshore Renewables Joint Industry Partnership that targets work coming out of the Offshore Wind Environmental Evidence Register. That utilizes industry funds to target projects that are most in need for offshore consenting of wind. You've got, I'm sure a few of you are familiar with the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. Now this is less environmental. They deal with more sort of engineering challenges and innovative technologies and so on. And then, last but by no means least, you've got the Eco Wind and the Eco Flow programs. Now, Eco Flow is just getting started, but Eco Wind, like one of the programs I work on, this is co-funded by the Natural Environment Research Council of the UK, the Crown Estate Scotland, but they also work in close collaboration with industry partners, and they provide things like site access and data access. So we've got a good few examples there of how partnerships work, but there's something missing. If you're to support the delivery of North Sea management priorities, it's not just about funding research and forming collaborations. It's about identifying where the challenges are and focusing that research on addressing those challenges and coming up with reasonable solutions that can be followed out and carried out through government often. We've heard about the management priorities over the last couple of days. And it's the understanding those is the building block that you can begin to work on the third pathway, how industry can help in this area, and that is by looking at research impact and how you can actually support the impact of your research. So for the rest of the rest of my quick, brief talk here, I'm going to just talk about the INSITE program, because that's why most of us are here. So INSITE has, INSITE makes use, actually, of all three of these pathways, which is great. It makes it a good example to talk about this. So I'll start with the beginning, where sort of around about 2013, the discussions began, and by 2014, you had the first phase of INSITE, and it was funded solely by a consortium of oil and gas companies operating in the North Sea. They were concerned with environmental effects and decommissioning, and that's what brought them all together. Now, at the time, this was the first real joint industry partnership of its kind in UK marine research. It provided £2.4 million, and that created the means for 8 research projects and a data project. To keep the research independent, there was the formation of an independent science advisory group, and that was critical, ensuring the objectivity of the science, and the research was evaluated by that board as time went on. Now, I'm not sure to what extent Phase 1 addressed the North Sea management priorities, but what it did show is that a joint industry partnership can generate solid scientific outputs, and they can build the scientific capacity in the field. So you had access to field sites, which enabled meaningful collection of data to support analyses. You also had outcomes that attracted the attention of future partners, and these are the 2 new partners that came on board for INSITE Phase 2. It attracted the attention of the Natural Environment Research Council, and also the Centre for Environment, Fisheries and Aquaculture Science. And they partnered up to form a new industry consortium. They partnered up with a new industry consortium. They formed a second, larger, more ambitious program this time, with a combined fund now of 7, if you add up all the numbers there, it should come to 7.5 million. And that has delivered 8 research projects, a data access project, a synthesis project, and funded 8 PhD studentships, building capacity for the future generation of scientists working in this field. So we've heard a great deal about the great research that's been coming out of INSITE, and a lot of this, like I've said, has been made possible through the funding and the partnerships there. But we haven't heard so much, although we have heard bits and bobs about research impact and engagement with the public, and it's really, really great to have those examples. And I think the VR display with the NS 3D team there is a great example of that, of trying to get the research out there. I'd like to draw your attention to a few other examples of how industry are funding work that is trying to reach out and deliver scientific impact in different areas. So we have our conference today as an example of that, bringing people together to discuss these challenges and issues and share in their scientific outcomes. We had a webinar series that our INSITE team put together last year. There's a web link on the website if you want to watch any of that content. That's all still up. Please do. There are around 6 sort of challenging policy areas that are still challenging policy areas, so you can get better informed there. In addition to that, we've had some sort of art collaborations. You would have seen yesterday the mock-up of like a model of an oil and gas platform. We also had policy, for the policy audience, developed policy briefs that target specifically the kind of messages we think that are needed for challenges in the government space. So Phase 2 of INSITE is drawing to a close, but I am pleased to say, and echo what Dickon mentioned earlier on, that we're cooking up a Phase 3 for INSITE. And this third phase is going to utilize all 3 of those industry support pathways, co-funded by industry. There'll be partners on board, the National Environment Research Council, and we're setting out to work closely with government regulators and policy teams in this space so that we can deliver more meaningful impact from science for the most pressing challenges in the North Sea. So Dickon showed a great slide, I think it was a figure I put together, of some of the challenges and the priority areas. So a lot of that's already been covered, and you got a good look at that. I've just thrown some of them along the bottom there. What I will draw us to, though, just as I close up here before I finish, is the Value in Marine Artificial Structures program. And yes, I am going over this ground again because this pre-announcement is out where we will be, I was going to say the real announcement's coming out in a few weeks' time, but with the UK general election happening over this period, I think it could be delayed ever so slightly. Dickens showed the 3 objectives of the program. So we're looking for ecosystem understanding around structures. We're also looking to focus that through a natural capital lens, so you can better articulate that through sort of socioeconomic understandings, but also that you can deliver impact from that. And in addition to that, I've drawn 2 wordy challenges out of the proposal, and it just I just wanted to outline that really we're looking for those things, but to understand that over the life cycle, if you look at challenge 1, over the life cycle of structures. So it's thinking of structures as these things that we need, we put them out there and we use, but there's not just, they don't just go away, they have a life cycle. And it's to explore the environmental effects and natural capital, how that changes over that life cycle. And then, another shout out to developing the right evidence base and tools. And I think this is the community that we will be looking to develop exactly those. So just to wrap it up there, I'm sure you've got all of our contact details, but they're all on the slide anyway. So with that, I'll say thank you, and I'll hand over to our next speaker.
Thanks, Henk.